Hello, everybody. What's up? Happy Sunday. Hope you guys are doing well. We are going to get started in just a second. We'll let people kind of log in and get going. In the meantime, I want to show you two awesome things I got this week because I think it's cool. These are two amazing books that I just bought. The first one, Child of the Civil Rights Movement. Yes. And while you're watching, tell us, where you're from. Say what's up. What's up, Todd? What's going on, man? And the next one is The Youngest Marcher. I just got these both in the mail this week, and I'm super excited. This one in particular, Child of the Civil Rights Movement, I'm super excited about this one. If you look at the author, Paula Young Shelton, you may recognize the middle name there with Young. This is the daughter of Andrew Young, civil rights activist, and the first African-American ambassador to the UN for the US as well. If you've ever been to Atlanta or live in Atlanta, you know Andrew Young is very, very important there. And so his daughter, who is an educator, actually wrote this book. So I just wanted to show these two as we're kind of letting people log in and stuff. Two fantastic books that I want to recommend one more time. Child of the Civil Rights Movement and The Youngest Marcher. And I like them both because they are written for the young leader and with the young leader in mind. So two book recommendations while we get started here. So what's up, everyone? You ready?
I think so, yeah.
All right, so this is Jacqueline's first time.
Yes.
So we're gonna be nice to her, right?
Yes, I'm a little nervous,
but
or a lot nervous.
Well, it's gonna be just fine. So I guess, who are we? Why are we here? So first, we are here live from our couch, and we just put our boys to bed.
Yes.
And so we're going to cross our fingers that they stay in their bed and quiet. That way we can do this peacefully.
Yes. I warned them not to come down. I did give them a warning.
Yes, and usually they stay in bed, so I don't think we're going to have too much of an issue. But I guess we should start with introductions.
Sure.
All right. Go ahead. You can start off.
So I'm Dr. Jacqueline DeVico. I'm a board-certified pediatrician. I originally started out in investment banking and then realized that was just not a satisfying career for me. And so went back to school, did 2 years of prerequisites. I did a couple years working at a genetics lab. I did 4 years of medical school, 3 years of pediatric residency, and now I'm a board-certified pediatrician practicing here in Greensboro, North Carolina.
It's been a heck of a journey.
Yes, with a very supportive husband.
Super proud of her. And I am Adam DeVico, and I am a career educator for the past 17 years. I've been a teacher, a principal, a curriculum instructor, a college professor, an author, and I get to travel around the country doing professional development. So I feel very fortunate that I've seen so many different lenses of education over the years, which makes it kind of a unique situation here between the two of us.
Yes.
In what is now obviously a very hot topic in our country with reopening schools.
True.
And so it is on everyone's mind. It's not a secret. It's on everyone's feed. It's not a secret. And so we thought with the pediatric side and the educator side, we have this unique situation going here where we can kind of share some thoughts and get to, maybe answer a few questions if we get a chance. And most importantly, just get to see things from different perspectives. And I think that's not what we always get to do. I know my feed, my Facebook and social media feed is pretty much all educators. And so I am very immersed in the educator perspective. Yeah.
And mine's pretty much entirely physicians, physician moms, pediatricians. So we're looking at this from kind of two different angles, the educator and the doctor, as well as parents. I mean, we're a parent of 2 boys. So.
Yeah. So we kind of have those multiple perspectives that we'll bring into it. And obviously, there's some perspectives we don't have. We're not not politicians. No. We're not lawmakers.
No, and I cannot speak for all pediatricians or any pediatrician aside from myself, just like Adam can't speak for all educators.
Right. And so, we're coming from a personal perspective, but we also come with some experience and hopefully maybe a smidge of knowledge. So I was thinking maybe we could start off with something that came out, a few weeks ago?
I think so.
A few weeks ago. So something called the AAP recommendations. And in the education world, that caused quite a stir. It was pretty controversial.
Well, and I will say it did in the medical world as well, from both sides, people having very vast opinions about it. So first of all, what is the American Academy of Pediatrics, or what is the AP? The American Academy of Pediatrics. It's the largest group of pediatricians. Almost every pediatrician is a part of it. I am. And honestly, it's a fantastic group. And what they do is their primary goal is to advocate for child's health and all aspects of child's health. And we know children's health and education kind of go hand in hand. A lot of people saw the CDC recommendations and thought, hey, that's a bunch of people who deal with adults and have no idea what kids are like, making recommendations. And so therefore, the American Academy of Pediatrics has been, asked about it. So they came out with a position statement, or they came out with some recommendations, which I really do encourage people to actually look them up and read, and not, I've seen quite a few memes on Facebook that are not what the AAP said.
Oh, it was like summaries.
Summaries, but very
Not even
inaccurate.
that, yeah.
Very inaccurate summaries. It's a long document, so I get that it's wordy to read. But what I think is important is, the first statement that they came out with, saying that the goal should be to get children physically present in school. Now I want to clarify, they said that is the goal. They didn't say that that is the absolute must-have for every school district in every area of the country. They didn't say funding should be withheld if schools cannot achieve this. And then they kind of they break down into kind of recommendations for schools. They kind of break down for, pre-K and then elementary versus secondary education, talk a little bit about employees. I know they had a little piece on, bus drivers, and, it's one voice and not, or one group of voices, we'll say. And it certainly should not be the only voice in talking about what should go on with reopening schools. But I do feel like a group of pediatricians should have their say, because that's what we deal with. We deal with child's health.
So that became kind of controversial in the teacher world. And so obviously in my circles and my feeds, a lot of the feedback, of course, was, how in the world am I supposed to keep kids 3 to 6 feet apart? How am I supposed to monitor temperature checks and and then all the what ifs came into play. Very valid what ifs, by the way. What if I have a kid that's positive in my class? Now, does that mean everyone stays home for 2 weeks? Do I stay home for 2 weeks? There's so many what ifs, and if you're in any type of teacher circle right now or parent circle, you've probably seen these questions pop up, and they're very valid questions.
Yeah.
And so now I do want to give you a second because AAP came up with a second round of this, right?
They did, yes. So there were a lot of opinions based on their statement, and so then they came out with a joint statement with the NEA, and what other groups were in that?
AFT.
AFT, yes.
Yeah, those were the two big teacher unions.
And then a superintendent group as well. But basically with the joint statement, still all saying, yes, the goal should be to get children physically present in school, focusing more on the younger age. But this time, this kind of joint statement really talked about the importance of funding, which we are definitely not able to answer tonight as an educator and a pediatrician, other than the fact that funding is incredibly important. If we can fund our small businesses, and I'm part of a private practice, we are a small business, but if we can fund our small businesses, we need to fund our schools. Children's education is incredibly important for their health.
See, so funding is this funny thing, and I've seen funding go around a bunch, and I want to put on my principal hat for a second here, because funding is great. Yes, we need money in education, no doubt about it. But we also need to look short term. So yes, short term funding, I think, can get us some essential items, your PPE, masks for teachers, masks for students. We can get temperature, what are they?
Thermometers.
Yeah, like the...
thermometer, like scan.
Yeah, the scanners, the forehead
thermometers.
scanners. That's the short term stuff that budgets can get us and money can get us. Here's what money can't get me. Money cannot get me another teacher this quickly who gets sick or is unable to, or, is a high risk and is just be like, nope, peace, I'm out. And look, we're in North Carolina. Teachers are not knocking down the doors here to get a job. All right,
No.
This is not a high, competitive state to get a teaching job. I wish it was, and we can go back, and look at this big study in many of your states, because I know a lot of your states face the same kind of thing with salary being one of them. So yes, budget and money does play effect, but we're looking short game right now. That's a long-term conversation. This is the short game right now. And as a principal, man, where am I going to find bodies to fill in these rooms when teachers can't come in? And so that's where the big conversation, of course, now is with, all right, do we go remote?
Yeah. And, I think while remote education certainly has its benefits, it also has its limitations. And, I feel like whatever decision school districts make, and there's no one decision that I think is correct for every area of the country, but, every decision is going to have some wrong in it. You've got keeping everybody healthy and not getting sick with the novel coronavirus. And then you've got childhood, everything that they get at school, which is not only their education, which is much more significant in person, but also their social, emotional health, their food, teachers are able to connect with children in a way, and we're able to, look for signs of abuse. And, teachers, I'm talking to the choir, teachers do so much more than just teach kids. And so every time we make this worse, we make this better, and every time we try to make this better, this gets worse. And every decision is going to make one area worse, the other better, and there's no perfect answer. That's why I say everything's a little bit wrong.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, obviously, your district is going to make a decision. I mean, every parent watching right now, every teacher watching right now, there's a decision that's going to get made. And 100% guaranteed, it's going to piss off someone. I mean, that is guaranteed. There is no way you're going to make everyone happy. We're going to have to accept that. But for me, the big push, and I don't know if any of y'all watched State of the Union this morning with Dana Bash on CNN. She interviewed Betsy DeVos. Now, if you're watching, you don't know who Betsy DeVos is. She is the current Secretary of Education for the United States. In education circles, if you're not in education, you may not know her, but any educator is going to know that she's not everyone's favorite person. But her hard statement was, we want kids in school, or we want kids back in school. She answered it over and over and over. Every question that was asked was going to be, we want kids in school. Yeah. But she missed one key word at the end, safely. Had she said one extra word, safely, at the end, I think that would have changed the entire tone. Now, it may not change your perception of Betsy, but it would have changed the entire tone, safely. Because, like you said before, every district is going to need to make a decision, because, we have a big country. We're not going to be able to make this blanket statement like we did maybe back in the spring when we were like, all right, everyone's going virtual. There are some areas of the country that are not as infected right now. And so might they be able to go back to school a little bit safer? Perhaps. But there's others that can't.
Yeah. So, and what are some things we can do to help children go back safely? And that's, the American Academy of Pediatrics, put that in their statement, while also recognizing how realistic some of the recommendations are. For example, talking about keeping desks, 6 feet apart versus 3 feet apart, mask wearing. And I think, we had a conversation before kind of about, how this is spread and why these things are in effect.
Explain this a little bit, because I learned a lot here. So if you're not really a doctor person watching this, listen to this, because it's pretty important to figure out, to know. So go ahead.
So the way many viruses, and the way, what we're constantly learning new things about the novel coronavirus, which causes COVID-19, but it's spread in multiple ways. The most common / I think important route of spread is called respiratory droplet. Well, what does that mean? That means basically droplets that kind of come from our mucous membranes, our nose and our mouth. So when we talk, especially more when we sneeze, when we cough, when we sing, when we're breathing heavier, all of those big globs of kind of saliva spit, microscopic to us, but kind of fall out of us. And we know that a certain percentage fall in the first foot, and then another percentage, but smaller, fall in the second foot, and then the third foot. And that's kind of where the kind of 6 foot recommendation comes from, but then also the more realistic, okay, well, is 3 feet good enough. That also is why masks are recommended. And so we know that other countries who have done a very good job wearing even just the cloth or the surgical masks have really reduced coronavirus. Now, those surgical or cloth masks are great at containing your own respiratory droplets without infecting other people. They do an okay job about protecting you from other people's respiratory droplets. Now, that's not the only way that COVID is spread. So there's been a little bit of debate in the medical community about how aerosolized or airborne this virus is, and I think the overall, at least consensus, at least for right now, things change, is that yes, there is what's called airborne or aerosolized spread, meaning those respiratory droplets are so microscopically tiny that they carry the virus, they kind of float around the room. And those can kind of circulate in rooms for hours. And they think that's where some of these, we'll call them super spreader events are, where you have one sick person in an exercise class and then 20 people are infected.
Because it's just like sticking on stuff and it's in the air.
Well, that's in the air. The sticking on stuff is actually kind of a third way. We call those fomites, which basically is those respiratory droplets or the aerosolized droplets. They like hang out on things. And we know that it can hang out on things, for even up to a few days. Now, granted, that doesn't mean you can't clean it off, and we don't think that's a significant route of transmission. The respiratory droplets has been kind of talked about as the most common or significant route of transmission. The aerosolized droplets is a route, and that's where you hear about those N95 masks. Those are the masks that have that big metal thing that go over your nose, that bend to it. They're really tough to breathe in. Just from a comfort standpoint, you can oxygenate just fine in them. But those masks are the ones that not only protect you from the respiratory droplets, but also the aerosolized ones.
So, I mean, I guess all right, so I'm going teacher standpoint now. What do I need to think about? I'm a teacher that's being told, yep, we're going back in school. All right, so in 1 month from now, you got kids coming in. What can you do, kind of thing? And so cleaning is going to be a big thing, right?
Absolutely, and that's where they talked about, when it comes to children sharing things or sharing toys, which we know is going to be,
it's going to happen.
It's going to be inevitable in the lower grades,
it's gonna happen.
More easily monitored in the older grades. But they talk about trying as best as you can to limit shareable items to things that are harder surfaces that are more easily cleaned.
So here's my thing. So I'm talking to my teachers now. How do we get these supplies? And we talked about funding before, of course, being important. So, are we going to get Clorox wipes? Are we going to have custodial staff available? Are we going to increase our custodial staff? Because most schools on average, in your 600-person school, you might have 3 or so custodians, and it goes up from there. But where are we going to get the materials and the personnel to keep these places clean? Here's the other thing, too. Did anyone ever have your little OSHA code words? So OSHA would come in the building and all of a sudden you got this code word of Mr. Green is in the building. And everyone knows to go hide all your Clorox wipes, right? And yeah, we all did it. Don't shy away. We've all done that. But for real, okay. So OSHA now, their job is to make sure that things are sanitary, basically. Now, where are they at for this? And I'm afraid that they're going to be hiding in the background now because we ain't got money for any kind of cleaning stuff. So I don't know where are we getting the stuff? Are we going to be able to use it? When are we going to be able to clean? Is that going to be up to the teachers? I don't want my teachers having to go around in full PPE gear having to clean stuff. That's crazy. I mean, instruction is going to be hard enough, y'all. I don't want my teachers having to go around now, having to be, full hazmat going to clean.
Yeah, and some people are pointing out these healthcare providers are having issues with these supplies. And it's funny you talk about OSHA. We have JCO in the healthcare field, but similar. We're in the hospital. Everyone's like, oh, JCO's around. No, hide your food, hide your coffee, because they can't see that. But when physicians and other healthcare providers, nurses, respiratory therapists, etc., are being told, hey, those masks that really are only supposed to be one-time use for one patient, actually, I want you to save it in a paper bag and reuse it for 5 straight days in a row. So these are actually very similar conversations
Yeah.
that those in the healthcare field have had. And I'm not, I don't consider myself a frontline worker. I'm not in the hospital dealing with COVID patients on a regular basis, but I know many doctors are, and that's tough for them.
Yeah. And, okay, so, we've really looked at a lot, like, all right, for those people who are going back, and it's going to be some of you, and including my district here, the favored decision right now is to go back. We know that there's already districts around the country. I think there's maybe not APS, but one of the Atlanta suburbs districts has already announced they're going to be online. There's going to be, I've seen several districts already announce that they are going virtual to start out the year, at least, 9 weeks, first quarter. And so, we go back to where we were in the spring, but that too has its detrimental effects. We were talking about the other day with, so yes, teachers are going to stay safer. Let's be real. Teachers are going to stay safer. And I mean, that's pluses for me, hands down. Because, if I don't want to get sick either, none of us want to get sick. So virtual is going to keep us safer. Yeah. But we know there's so many compounding issues that can come with that.
Yeah. Well, the first thing that we were talking about is what happens to working families, whether both parents are working or single parent households where that parent does have to leave the house to work. Are those kids going to end up at daycares, which then kind of defeats the whole purpose? It defeats the whole purpose of having them, virtual school. And they're not going to get the education at daycare or that, an after school program that's going to see them throughout the day, that they are in an actual school.
Well, and even if you look back to what happened in the spring, everyone kind of started off like, all right, we got this. All right, teachers, parents, we're going to work together. And I'm speaking from people that we know personally, by the end of, May, June and stuff, it was pretty haphazard.
Oh, yeah.
And in some cases, Grandma Blue was helping, and Uncle Ted was working on it, and they don't have much of a teacher background at all, and so
they're also probably older and higher risk for COVID complications.
Exactly. So we've got a lot of tough. I think we're back.
We're back. Okay.
All right. I think we're back. Someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear us. We lost our internet for a second, so. All right, someone give me a thumbs up if you can hear us. There we go. I see someone pop up.
Okay,
Thank you so much. Thanks. All right, so we were just saying that, we don't know who are going to be able to truly facilitate that instruction at home, knowing that so many parents have got to go back to work. But here's the other thing, too. We're putting a lot of pressure on teachers to make these accommodations. I would love for private sector world and public sector world to also work with education. Yes, people have to work, but I would love to see, and I don't know if anyone here has this opportunity, but have any of your employers given you some leeway and understanding in, if you're not a teacher watching this right now, have any of your employers given you a little bit of leeway in being like, hey, look, I know your kid's going to be home. Let's work this out. You could still, you still got your job. We still pay you. Because otherwise, there's a lot of onus on education to make it work. And not other businesses.
Agreed. And I think, I would love school districts to give families options. And the reason for that is so virtual learning might work great for some families and might be the safest, well, we know it's the safest option, but might be a great option for, children with special health care needs, children who are, immunocompromised because they're going through chemotherapy, or perfectly healthy kids who happen to live with a parent who is immunocompromised, or a grandparent, or is constantly around somebody who is high risk, and their family decides, this really is best for us to just keep kids at home, stay virtual. We feel that's the safest.
Yeah.
I want school districts to have that option. But also, from all of this social distancing in children, we are seeing a lot of other, unintended consequences from this. We're seeing, and parents can probably attest to this too, many more behavioral issues in kids, increased anxiety, increased depression. Anecdotally, I'm seeing a lot more bedwetting and a lot more, underwear accidents. Kids aren't sleeping well. I know some kids are staying up all night and then, have spotty sleep during the day. Obesity, huge issue. I know people often joke about the COVID-19. Well, think about it. You've got children at home. The parents got to work. You can't keep an eye on your school-age child 24/7 when they're in the house with you. Basically, unlimited access to the refrigerator and the pantry. Your adult brain has a hard enough time saying, oh, you know what, I really don't need that third cookie. It's not healthy for me. Kids' brains they don't have, we call it a fully developed prefrontal cortex, which I call the prefrontal cortex. It's the front of your brain, but I call it the human part of the brain, the adult part of the brain, the part of the brain that thinks about consequences of their actions. And that's not even fully developed till age 25, which is why, teenagers make a lot of decisions without thinking of the future consequences of their actions. But we're seeing that now, and a lot of the after effects of this we're not going to know for years from now. Obese children still are pretty healthy children until they become adults, and they have heart attacks at 50 instead of 80. And so I don't know, I always tell people, my goal as a pediatrician is not only to have make your child healthy, but to teach this healthy child how to stay healthy and become a healthy adult. I don't feel like my job's done until I see healthy adults out there that I've once taken care of. And I think most pediatricians feel that way.
Well, and something else we talked about, and we've had some people talk to us, just, knowing our fields and stuff, some friends asking about all right, long-term effects. We don't know. No. It's we're in the now.
Yeah, no. And that's the opposite point of that. You mentioned long-term effects. A lot of people ask, well, what are the long-term effects of getting COVID-19? We know, what do we know about it right now? We know overall children are less likely, oddly enough, the children are less likely to get this virus than adults, which was initially a surprise to us. So most of the time when we think about these kind of respiratory illnesses, we think of kids as little snot factories, and they're constantly coughing, sneezing, rubbing snot all over the teachers. And most adults are infected, from their kids. Our studies are finding the opposite with COVID, with the novel coronavirus. Most children, are not, they're not these carriers of COVID that we thought they were. Most kids when they do the contact tracing, are infected by an adult. Most kids are going to be either asymptomatic, have mild symptoms, or moderate symptoms. Very few kids are going to be hospitalized. They represent like 0.5% to 2% of the hospitalizations, and they represent at most 0.5% of the deaths or less, which again, I'm a pediatrician. My goal is 0 kids dying. My absolute goal is 0. But we know they're, I guess, for now, they're relatively less affected compared to what we initially thought when this, first hit.
But obviously, it's not just kids in the school. It's teachers that are in there as well. And with the number of teachers that are going to be high risk, for whatever reason, that's scary.
Yeah,
and I'll tell you, man, I just keep going back to, I don't know about y'all's schools, but I knew on Friday I was in for a headache because I was inevitably going to have a handful minimum of absences on a Friday and a Monday. It happens in every school, everywhere. It's just a 3-day weekend. I get it, all right? You don't have to rationalize it, all right? And so where are we getting these subs from? So we're in person. You get a teacher infected and they're out 14 days, 10, let's just say 14. Where am I getting a long-term sub from? What sub wants to come into this situation? And if we're trying to avoid cross-contamination and stuff, what sub is going to be, or how is it safe for a sub to be going from school A to school B to school C, back to A, back to B, if we're trying to break it? So, that's another one of my big concerns. Look, y'all, I want kids in school.
Yeah, I think really do too.
Everyone wants to. But like I said before, if you've been watching us this whole time, there's that one key word that I can't not include each time: safely. For the kids, for the teachers, for the parents. And I don't know, I just, right now, if you were to ask me, all right, and I'm just going to say our district, all right, right where we live in North Carolina, all right, we're kind of in the middle of the state of North Carolina, and we're kind of holding steady, more or less. But if you gave me the choice, all right, if I got all the power right now and you said home or virtual, I'd vote virtual right now. First 9 weeks. What would you do?
Well, let me look at you've got your principal hat. Let me ask you the parent hat, because virtual means that you would take on, since, I work in the office, virtual means you would take on the homeschooling.
But I would be home.
But you would be home.
I would be home. It would be hard. It'd be hard on a lot of people who are going to have to do it.
I will say, I think, I really think at least for the younger grades, I really do want to see them back in school safely. Agreed, safely. And it's hard, it's, again, one size fits all.
No,
it's not the right answer.
There's no one size fits
No.
all. But every district has to make a choice.
True.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
No matter where you live,
Yeah.
they've got to make a choice.
Yeah. But I would love to see, first of all, I want, again, families to have the ability to, virtually homeschool. I want families to feel that they can safely send their children to school and have the ability to go back and forth.
And we got to change the wording a little bit too, because it's not homeschooling, it's distance learning.
Learning, yeah, true. Yes, you're correct. Sorry, non-educator.
It's all right. We're learning from each other in this.
Yeah.
Because homeschool implies that the parent is in charge of curriculum and instruction and X, Y, Z. This would be distance learning, where the parent would be hopefully facilitating and supporting the teacher, but the teacher is ultimately responsible for that instruction.
Yeah.
Which is a whole nother conversation.
Well, and I think school districts need to be flexible. If there is an outbreak at their school, then you've got to react to it. You've got to pull back and say, oh, nope, you've got to keep kids at home now. If kids are sick, if kids diagnosed with COVID or teachers diagnosed with COVID, as you said, they're supposed to be quarantined 14 days. So families need this flexibility to go back and forth. Yeah. And it's hard because I know all of the benefits of sending kids to school, and I don't know. I can't. I'm glad I'm not the person actually having to make this decision.
I think all of us can agree. Whoever's watching this tonight, unless you are one of the very unlucky few, I am so glad I am not actually responsible for actually making this decision ultimately. Let me just say one more thing. What is one thing? All right, so doctor question here.
Okay, yeah.
What is one thing that we can do right now because I think our curve got just completely destroyed. So what is one thing that everyone needs to do right now to help flatten the curve?
Mask. I really think mask is the way to go. Mask. And I will say, so some things that we've been doing at our office. So everyone 2 and older has to wear a mask, or at least attempt to. And I will say, almost all kids are doing much better than I think people expect with it. Especially if the mask actually is child size and fits their face. But we know that in places where everyone's worn a mask pretty much everywhere, COVID rates are going down. And once you lower that community spread, then it becomes safer for kids to go back to school. And, I think that it's a culture change for us, but I will say kids in other countries are doing it. I do think we can, if it's keep our 100% of kids at home, or hey, everybody, just mask up everywhere. And hopefully our climate becomes safe enough that we can send kids back to school. Guys, it's worth the mask. It's really, the mask is the big thing. And especially get kids, if, masks are required in school, get them to just practice. Get them to pick out a mask and get used to wearing it at home, and listen to them if they say, oh, it hurts around my ears. There are plastic things you can kind of put around the back. There's ways to make masks more comfortable.
Oh, I didn't tell you about this. I don't know if any of you, I have no idea. It was on someone's teacher feed, or it might have been in a group I'm in. All right, teachers listening right now, and parents too. This is so cool, because you know how kids lose everything. I don't know about y'all, but like my lost and found pile was like 2 stories high. We made donations to Goodwill like quarterly, and it was ridiculous how these jackets magically appeared. They're never anyone's, in their words. But I saw this very cool little hack. So you know how there's those like lanyards where you typically put ID badges. I saw a teacher or a parent or something have this cool idea where they it was a lanyard, but they attached it to the mask. So that way when a kid, because inevitably, let's be real, kids are going to take it off. It's going to fall off. They have to eat.
Sure. Yeah.
Y'all, how many masks do you expect to see in the cafeteria if you even eat in the cafeteria or during
I was
lunch?
going to say,
you're probably not even going to.
I was going to say, I feel like that's a change that's easier to make.
They're going
kids
to be
eating
found
in
anywhere. But I
classrooms,
really, this was a really cool hack
Yeah.
to see the lanyard.
That's
So
nice.
it's a traditional lanyard with a little clip, and they just put it on there. So when you take it off, it just sits there.
Yeah.
All right. So that's my hack of the night. You're welcome, and thank you for whoever had that idea. But I thought that was a cool idea. All right. So. We said we were going to go about a half hour. We're at a half hour.
Right.
This is our first time here,
It
so
is, yes.
we're going to go. We're not going to answer questions now because I'd have to scroll through, and I'm not used to that stuff. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back through, look at all these questions and everything. We'll answer as many as we can, and maybe we'll do another one.
I think I can do another one.
You think you do another one?
I think I can.
Right. If you like tonight, then
well,
let us know if you want another one. If not, then just tell us to shut up and we won't do any more. So either way, we appreciate you joining tonight.
Thanks, guys. And I want to say, it's great to be able to have conversations with educators because our goal is to create amazing kids, and we all have the same goal. And we can only do this if we work well together, and I think we can support each other well. And so I appreciate this a lot.
That's right. All right. Well, y'all be good. Have a great night, and we'll see you soon.
That's good.
Bye.